Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Cage Trolls Reacts. Today we're going to be talking about Luke Cage.
Mr. Fist Power?
Yeah, the Power Man himself, Mr. Fist Power, Luke Cage. No, Netflix decided to go ahead and finish out the Defenders almost. That we have one more. We have Iron Fist coming still. But I honestly never thought they were going to get this far. When they came forward and they're like, we're teaming up with Netflix to do a series of shows. We're going to do Daredevil first, and then we're going to do Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, then all culminating in the Defenders. I was like, yeah, right.
See, at first, my first reaction was totally different than yours, and then mine kind of turned into yours. Because I was super excited. I was like, there's no way they can screw up Daredevil, can they?
No, and they didn't. I mean, they did carry out their promise. And then we have Iron Fist coming out soon. We have promos for that. We're going to do a reaction for that here in a little bit for the trailer. I'm super excited for all of those. But on the topic of Luke Cage, how did you feel about it overall?
Overall, not quite as good as the rest of the Netflix superhero shows, but still better than every other show out there,
right.
You know?
And that's I reviewed it for Triton XP. Go ahead and check out my review over there. I gave it a 7.8.
Okay.
And that's a really good score. That's up there, you know. That's great, really, on most scores. And I did enjoy it. I just didn't love it as much as Daredevil. It's the same problem you get into a lot of video game reviews. A lot of people think that, you get a 7, that's in the weeds. You know, no one's going to watch it, play it. But the thing is 7.8 is really good. It's just not amazing. And that's the problem, is you have to compare it to those other shows. Daredevil, Season 1, Season 2, and Jessica Jones were all amazing.
Probably closer to a 9.
Yeah, no, seriously. I mean, like, they were, like, Season 1 of Daredevil, I loved. There were a few problems I had with it. They're not perfect by any means, but I loved them. I did not love Luke Cage. I really liked it, though. Specifically, there was just things that didn't work for me.
I think I loved the first half of it.
Yes, I definitely.
And then I grew to like the second half.
Yeah, that's definitely it. I think it lost a lot of steam. So, let's go into what you thought worked first off. So, specifically, what did you think was really good about it?
Well, I mean, I think the most apparent thing for the whole show is the music.
Oh, definitely.
The quality of it, the emotion that it brought to the show, and the progression of the music throughout the show.
Yeah, it was like you actually brought it up to me, like it was like an album. You know, it really was made like an album. And if you approach the show like an album, like this is track 1, this is track 2, it works really, really well. And I really liked how they incorporated it into the show. It wasn't this like third person narrator weird thing where like the music's there but they don't know it's there. They were specific acts at Cottonmouth's Club. Even when Method Man showed up and they were in the studio, I really liked all of that. I think they handled it really well, and it was really, really good music.
I think I was just gonna say, I think the song that sticks out to us the most is the one, "Long Live the Chief."
Jadena. I can't figure out how to pronounce the name. "Long Live the Chief." Yeah, it's probably my favorite track from it. Is it Power Man Love? Is that what they call it?
I don't remember.
Whatever Method Man song was my second favorite probably. But all of it is really, really good. You know, you have R&B, you have soul, you have hip hop. Oh man, there were so many good tracks on it. And part of it actually detracted a little bit for the show because I thought the music was better than a lot of episodes.
Oh yeah.
Was honestly what kept me going a little bit in the second half when I kind of got bored. It bored me a little bit in the second half. And not because there wasn't lots of action. There's not a lot of action, period, in Luke Cage.
Not really.
Which is surprising, and it worked for it, really. But the music is what kept me going. I was like, well, I want to see what the next song is. So I kept watching. And it ties in the motif. I mean, every single name of an episode is from a Tribe Called Quest album. It's built into the DNA of it.
Yeah.
One of the things that I thought worked really well was Harlem itself. And not stereotypical, Harlem is its own character. It's nothing like that. It's that it brings a lot of character to the show with all the people in it. Everyone there not only feels like they belong there and that they're appropriate for the situation, it feels like they have a history there.
Right.
Every single character that walked into Pop's barbershop, every single person that was at Cottonmouth's Club, Cottonmouth himself, Pop himself, Mariah Dillard, the small baseball like memorabilia shop, the owners there, all of it, it just felt like this town has a history, and it does. And I feel like they represented that well on the show.
Not only it felt like it had history, it felt very like, in a way, obviously it's not a realistic show, but at the same time it is, because it's Harlem. It makes you feel like they're actually in a real place.
Because it's not that because Hell's Kitchen is also a real place, but they
fictional.
No, it's not fictional in title, but the way that the other Netflix shows portray Hell's Kitchen doesn't bother me. I think it's quite fun, but they make it seem like it's a giant part of Manhattan.
Yeah.
And there's all this violence, and like it's a very gentrified neighborhood. It's actually a very good neighborhood. And it's not like it's without crime or anything. And same thing with Harlem. Harlem is largely gentrified now. But that was part of the show. They talked about that. You know, Mariah Dillard trying to make Harlem black again. Keep the jobs there. She was talking about renovating. And even though it was all not quite altruistic, it made sense. Right. You know, like you said. Like, it felt real. Whereas in Hell's Kitchen still feels a little too fantastical for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's comic booky.
It is. So. And so was Luke Cage, but in a different way. It felt very campy. But that's kind of where it stops for Harlem working with me, because I think the superhero aspects got in the way. I think it became too much of a superhero soap opera. Yeah. You know, too many characters are connected for no reason other than comic books. You know, it's just like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if this person knows this person from this person's past? And I don't mean to go so what's the word for it? Like vague. I just don't want to spoil anything for anybody who hasn't seen it, because I think people will watch this for their initial reactions. It bothered me a little bit because I love superheroes. I watched it because it's Luke Cage. I love Luke Cage. He's an awesome superhero, and I think Mike Coulter did a good job as him.
Oh yeah,
but it really got. I feel like the superhero elements got in the way of telling a really good story about gentrification in Harlem. And honestly, I feel like if you took Luke Cage and the superhero stuff out of this show,
it would have been a prime, probably a 95 to 100% for like a review.
Exactly. It reminded me, and for obvious reasons, the Get Down. You know, it's a hip hop story about origins, almost like superhero-esque, in a city very similar, and it's hard not to make those connections. But that show really worked for me on a level that Luke Cage didn't, because it played to the right camp, but it also knew when to rein it in. And Luke Cage seems like it really wanted to have those soap opera elements, but didn't know how to put them in there. Because like you said, the first half is really, really good. You know, it is superhero-y. You know, Luke Cage is getting in fights. It's showing off his powers, which also worked really well in the show. I can take an aside for a second, like just to talk about the fact that he didn't use his powers 24/7. That was not a big part of it. But when he did, it felt like he was enjoying it. Yeah. Which is kind of new for all of these shows. Jessica Jones doesn't like using her powers. Daredevil only uses them at night because he has a secret identity. Right. And where in Luke, no secret identity, he's trying to hide out and stay low, but anyone he fights knows he's Luke Cage. Right. So he just kind of rolls up in there.
Not Carl Lucas.
Carl Lucas, yes. I'm like, I couldn't think of his name either. But it seemed like he enjoyed his powers. You know, he used a couch as a weapon at one point and smiled about it. That was cool because he doesn't know martial arts. He didn't have to have special choreography. The only training he had was when he was a cop. And while cops do know how to fight, it's not like they know Jeet Kune Do or Wing Chun like Daredevil, you know, or spend years boxing. You know, they have a very rudimentary and utility.
He did spend a little bit of time boxing.
Yes, definitely in the prison. Yeah.
For the
not
brawling. Only that, but before that, when he was with his best friend / half brother /
Dude, I just said we weren't going to spoil anything.
I thought you said we.
No, I just said I was saying in Vegas I didn't want to spoil anything.
Oh, all of our reactions are always spoilers, so
not always. But so then we'll put a spoiler tag at front of it. Then if we're gonna get into spoilers, that's a different type of conversation.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so they did go into his background a little bit. He did know how to fight. I thank you. I forgot about that. So like he did have some boxing type things, but it was still much more of a brawl. But in a way, because he doesn't have to try. He doesn't need to use fancy fighting. He doesn't need to watch his footwork. Nothing can hurt him. Right. Well, until you get into special bullets made out of Chitauri metal. But, exactly. What do they call it? The Judas?
Judas, yes.
Yeah. Which is a good name. That's a really cool name. Cool. All Hammer Tech. That was a really neat, kind of Easter egg in there.
Yeah. I think they mentioned it too many times.
Oh, they played it. This is Hammer Tech. Judas. Hammer Tech. Did you miss that it was the Hammer Tech? Yeah. But when he was fighting, he didn't need to be all flamboyant about it. So he punches a lot of people. He slams guys around. And it was still really enjoyable to watch. I think that could have been a really boring way to portray the fight scenes. Right. And they found a fun way to implement it. But again, I just the superhero stuff after a while just kind of got in the way of a really good story. And I didn't expect that. I usually wish there's more superhero-ness in it. But
at the same time, like, Jessica Jones has a lot of superhero-ness, even though she's trying not to be. And then Daredevil has a lot of superhero-ness. So it's kind of nice to have something that's a little bit less superhero.
Right, and even though like they knew how to balance it. Daredevil does go out and fight vigilantes at night with a superpower, but the way that they portray it, not only just believability is fine, but it wasn't that camp level. Right. And it doesn't get into the soap opera. Everybody he fought was not a relative of his or someone he knew from prison.
Right.
These are people that he honestly only had tertiary connections to because he grew up in that town.
Right.
Whereas in Carl Lucas did not grow up in this town, and like he went to prison in New York, but other than that, or no, it wasn't even New York. Seagate Prison is in Georgia, right? Yeah. Which they made it seem like it was like a 2-hour drive for them. Even though it's pretty far away from New York.
That's the other thing is like the show to me felt like once they got to the end of it, it kind of felt like they did that within like a week or maybe a couple
seemed
days.
Like you mentioned it was like how you asked me how long it took place, and I was like, I think it's supposed to take place over like a month. You're like, it felt like a couple days, and it did. They did a very poor job of portraying time wise, and then also in the second half they really got bogged down in the fact that this is a superhero show.
They dragged it on too for certain like scenes.
Totally. We didn't need him going to see the doctor, which I thought was cool. But if his whole body is like a diamond and they needed to melt it with acid, why didn't they just do that one area? Why did they have to dump his entire body in there?
Yeah.
That pseudoscience really didn't work for me. They kept talking about his origins, which they changed, by the way. Not at all what Luke Cage was in the comics, which is fine, but that's a really big deal, is if you have this ex-cop who was framed and was sent to jail, who then got superpowers.
You don't just mention it.
No, maybe don't just gloss over that. Like, if you're, especially once they gave us the flashback to the prison, I was like, oh, this is cool. Is this where it's going to go? And I could tell they didn't want to do a lot of flashbacks, which is fine. Yeah. But it could have happened in more than one or two conversations. The fact that he was a cop is a bigger deal than what they made it. And I feel like I would have enjoyed that story a little bit more.
Because outside of them mentioning it, you don't really see it. You can't tell.
No, and I feel the same. Like you talked about, like you mentioned. I think it's better that we're doing this spoilerish because if we're going to talk about what else I didn't like is Diamondback. I think that was terrible. Up until he showed up, I thought that was going to be a really interesting character. And honestly, before he showed up, I was really enjoying the show. But then as soon as he shows up and with the Judas bullets, I mean, every one of these shows needs to show an episode where their hero is broken, because that's just It's not only a trope now in these shows, but it lets them be vulnerable for a little while. So, like, that's not so bad. But the way they did it, he just showed up randomly, and now all of a sudden he has a half-brother, which would have been a good twist if we knew about Stryker the entire time, if we would have known about this best friend. Luke never even mentioned him before that.
No, it just kind of made it seem like they had a show that they were shooting, and then halfway through shooting a different show.
Right, and I feel like if more than a passing glance to it. Right. Yeah. I don't think they need... I get why they combine the characters, to add more of the, again, superhero-ness, like the soap opera element. But they didn't need that. I feel like Diamondback could have still been an interesting character. And then, aside from the fact that he was his half-brother who had some weird vendetta for no reason, I'll get to motivations in a second, he just wasn't that interesting. He kept spouting biblical stuff, and he just wanted revenge.
He was very monotonous.
Yes, yeah, just the same thing over and over again for no reason. And he wanted revenge for no reason because Carl never did anything to him.
I think it would have been cooler if instead of having him fight his half-brother like that and him spouting those Bible verses, it would have been cooler if he actually fought a priest spouting those Bible verses.
Yeah, it could have been his dad. Like, honestly, like, I don't like the fact that it was all of that, but it could have been his dad. It would have been more interesting. Yeah. Or take away all of that, and it's just Diamondback. Maybe Diamondback was just a religious nut who wanted to take him out because he felt like he was an abomination. That would have been a more interesting story.
Yeah.
And instead, we get this, and he became a gang leader and a gun runner just to get his brother back, who we didn't even know was alive.
Right.
And also, he still had the file. Why? If he wanted to ruin his life, why wouldn't he destroy any information of it?
Yep.
All of that was a little frustrating. Along with the final episode, it was just kind of them talking for an hour and kind of explaining everything that we already all knew.
Right.
They didn't really get to any points. The one thing I think worked really well in the second half was the cop. The cop stuff. Misty Knight and having issues in the cop. Like, she's trying to do it by the book, having a hard time doing it by the book, and having a hard time doing it, like, with the vigilante. Like, she was very torn, and it showed very much that not all cops are bad, and I really like that aspect. I think Misty Knight was one of the most important characters in this story. But again, I feel like it would have been served better if she wasn't Misty Knight, if she was just a cop.
Yeah.
I did like that they tossed in a lot of Easter eggs there. Like she almost lost her arm, still might lose her arm.
Yeah.
In the end, they had her in her comic book costume
With her afro.
Yeah, God, she looked awesome. Number one. Number two, like I'm so excited for her to show up. Probably in Iron Fist. Probably going to be training with Colleen Wing, which is going to be really cool. She saw that like training like area, so. Yeah. That'll be neat because they're partners in the comics, and I was really disappointed that she showed up in Luke Cage instead of Iron Fist, but it really worked.
Yeah,
really worked for that. What else were you specifically disappointed in?
Let's see. I mean, other than like the second half kind of dragging on, when they drag on that whole kind of backstory, bringing it back when he goes Claire is taking him to the scientist.
Yeah, that made not a lot of sense to me. I was a little bit not just bored but confused. Okay, we get it. So he's in New York still, which is, or he's still in Georgia. He's still in Georgia, which is very interesting. That's where it happened. Like I doubt that he'd be that close.
Or maybe he's not in Georgia. I don't remember.
I think that's part of the issue is I couldn't remember. If they were, I thought they were in New York, and I was like, well, that's convenient. And then they showed up outside of Seagate Prison. He was looking at it from the water. So then, are they in Georgia? I get, you can drive from New York to Georgia, but
the other thing, and I don't honestly know how I feel about it. The whole thing with Reva.
Yeah, like they made her out to be this big character in Jessica Jones, and it turns out she wasn't. I like the idea that they turned on her. Like, oh, maybe she wasn't that good. I like that idea, but I feel like we still don't know much about her.
No, and honestly, like, there's no potential redemption arc for her.
No, and she's a dead character, and I don't think every single one needs a redemption arc, but she's one that probably did.
It needed it because we didn't know much. We kind of cared about her because of what happened with everything.
In Jessica Jones, and then going into Luke Cage, they built her up to be a better character,
kind of
too.
Confusing in a way, and then just frustrating.
I think part of the reason why they did that is they want to pair him up with Jessica Jones again.
Yeah, they want to give him a reason to not be tied back to her still. But.
And since he's disillusioned with her now, that's the only good thing I see out of it, is since he's disillusioned with Reva being this like almighty woman, who saved him, now he can open up his heart to going back to Jessica Jones, even though she killed her.
That makes sense.
I like that aspect because I want them to pair up. I want them to have their kid,
too. Because it's just classic.
It's just classic, exactly. It's one of those tales. It's a really good story arc, and that really fits into Jessica's story. I got really annoyed by Claire constantly saying, "Oh, I have a friend who's a lawyer."
Yeah,
I have a friend who's a lawyer. I liked it the first time. I was like, "Oh, that's a good line." But the more and more they said it, just kept more and more pulling me out of it. Going, "Why don't you show him?" I get that you're saving all those meetings. Like he's probably gonna be the reason why Luke Cage gets out of prison in the Defenders. And I get that, but the more and more you say that these worlds are connected and tell me that they're connected, but don't show me,
the less they're connected.
And the more issue I have with it. If you tell me you're going to give me ice cream, and you keep telling me over and over that we're going to get ice cream, but it's going to happen later on, quit telling me I'm going to have ice cream. I get it.
Boy Who Cried Wolf kind of thing.
We're going to get ice cream later. I get it. I'm just going to be mad about the ice cream.
You're just going to keep thinking about it until it happens, and then it's not going to happen until season 2.
Exactly. I liked when they had Turk show up. I thought that was a little heavy-handed when he was like, I'm going back to Hell's Kitchen. It was funny, but it was just a little campiness. But what I was talking about before with the motivations, Turk aside, all of the other villains seemed like they had no idea what they wanted.
Yeah.
Diamondback, it seemed like they were setting him up to take over Cottonmouth's organization, which I thought was interesting. And then he ended up being his brother for no reason. Speaking of that, our friend John, who you've probably seen on this channel before, we were watching it, and he's not a big fan of superheroes. He thinks they're too soap opera-y, and I'm in the middle of defending the show going, no, it's not going to be like that. This is taking a new direction. It's really fun. And he's like, I bet you that's his brother. I was like, no, man, that's not what they're doing here. And then it was his brother. So shout out to John. You were right. Luke Cage wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. So, we all lost.
The other thing, too, is like that fight at the end.
They never explained where the suit came from.
Nope.
Just random. Oh, it's also hammer tech. Where did he get all this hammer tech?
I don't know.
They never talk about that.
It was just Batman versus Superman.
It really was. It was for no reason he had it. And it wasn't a good fight.
No,
it was the worst choreographed and worst fight. The only thing I liked about it was the crowd joining in.
Yeah, it made it seem like a street brawl.
Exactly. It was exactly what would happen in that city. And also, they weren't like taking sides. Even though they wanted Luke to win, they weren't like joining in. They were like egging it on. Yeah. And it wasn't the cheesy, come on, Spider-Man, we'll pull the cranes around. Like, it wasn't that. They were just, like, cheering him on, And I really enjoyed that aspect. Because they weren't afraid that they were going to be in the fight. They just wanted to watch. They wanted to see what happened, who won.
Yeah.
It was the battle over the heart of Harlem, kind of. And that's part of the reason why I was a little upset. at the way that they kind of put Mariah Dillard in the background. She did have an origin story, which was neat, but I never believed she was good to begin with.
No, and then they kind of made her out to just go in kind of insane.
Insane, yeah, exactly. Instead of making her a more diabolical, evil person, it was more of a psychotic break.
Because she was a very political person from the beginning, and then things happen. She kind of goes crazy, and then you don't really know what's going to happen next with her.
Yeah, and the way that they did it, at first I was like, oh, she is a bad person. She just doesn't want to look politically. But then they kind of edged towards she's not, which kind of bothered me because then she was just disingenuous. And that was kind of annoying. Yeah. Especially when I really liked the dynamic between her and Cottonmouth.
Yep.
I think that was one of the strongest parts of the whole show.
And then their backstory, too, was very, very enticing, very interesting.
Yes, and I think it was very similar to the Kingpin flashbacks when we saw Fisk as a kid. I thought it worked really well for the show, except for Cottonmouth had no motivations. With Kingpin, when they flash back to him, it was to color why he is who he is. And they did that with Cottonmouth, except for then they gave him nothing to do.
Which, in a way, I thought was okay just because of kind of how it ended up. And then
right, I get what you're saying.
Was coming in, but then it just didn't resolve itself.
It didn't resolve itself, exactly. And the problem I had with it is Cottonmouth had no other motivation other than Cage. You know, like it was just like classic enemy because I'm your enemy. Mm-hmm. And Cage got in the way, so he was trying to take him out, and they just didn't play that well enough. I didn't believe that was a good enough motivation to do anything, really.
Not really.
You know,
other than the fact that he wasn't able to do what he wanted to do originally.
Yeah, instead of it being a really good tale of maybe Cottonmouth losing hold over Harlem, which they were leaning towards, and Diamondback coming and kind of taking it from him, it became, Cottonmouth's just a reason to bring Diamondback, who is Stryker, who is the brother, into the show.
Yeah.
And I could really see those wheels working backwards. I could go and figure out where they got to that point, and that was a little disappointing.
You got to look at it going forward from there.
Yeah, and that's the thing is I really feel like they lost sight of what they were trying to do with the show overall. Like you said, I felt like they did one show and then did a second one. But I like we said, there's still a lot of positives of the show. It was still really fun. The music's awesome. The choreography is good. Mike Coulter, while not, I don't think he was perfect. I definitely think of the main cast, he probably wasn't the strongest.
No,
but my problem with is the solemn hero, which he had to be. That was the role he had to play, and I think he could act well. But I feel like he was at his best when he was being funny. You know, when he was having fun being a superhero, and like he is bulletproof. So I feel like now that he's not hiding anymore, I feel like he's going to be a much better character.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and also let's tone down the Sweet Christmases. He said like 5 of them at the end. Like 1 or 2 is great. You know, it's every other line. Come on. I really like the swear jar. I think they did a little heavy-handedness with like, okay, you know, he reads. He's smarter than everybody else. You can kind of just get that from the way he talks.
Right.
I don't need to see that he reads like 9 different books every day.
Because he doesn't just talk. He talks, and you can tell it was actually thought out.
Exactly. You can tell he's the smartest person in the room.
Yeah.
And he doesn't let it bother him or other people.
No.
Like, he doesn't make it a thing.
No.
And I really, really enjoyed that. It was very believable. This dude was an upstanding citizen. He was a cop. He was framed. And now he's just here trying to make a difference. I really like that. And the heavy-handedness and the soap opera and the superhero-ness kind of gets in the way of that character.
Yeah.
Really fulfilling what I wanted from him. And I guess partly that's my expectations.
But now that it's over, I think it's going to be good here going forward for the Defenders and Luke Cage season 2 or whatever.
Exactly. He was even joking around with the FBI agents that take him away. You know, he's like, man, I was about to go get some dark coffee. Yeah. Like, I was like, damn, that was a really good line.
That was good.
Like, I was not expecting that. Like, you
don't like coffee.
Like, I really enjoyed when he was having fun is when I enjoyed it. And I think that was the difference, because while Jessica Jones was really grimdark, it still had its moments of levity.
Right.
And while Daredevil definitely was dark, he enjoys being the vigilante. Mm-hmm. He enjoys the violence. And while that is a dark part of the story, when they're having fun, I'm having fun.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be always an upbeat moment, but I feel like more moments of him at least being less than solemn, you know, I feel like I'll enjoy that a little bit more.
Yeah.
It's the same problem we have with Superman, not on the same level, but we never get to see them have any sort of a good day.
No.
And I feel like allowing Mike Coulter's Luke Cage to have a few more good days, I think I'm going to enjoy that a little bit more. Yeah. And I think that's the fun. I think that's the fun that we're going to have with Defenders. Definitely Iron Fist. I'm sure that's going to be a little bit more lighthearted.
That's the thing too. Is that's why I like Spider-Man so much, because he has so much bad things just happen.
Oh, terrible!
But there's so much levity with his character.
They really bounce back and forth with that, because even when it's bad, even when it's dire, he's making quips. He's trying to diffuse the situation.
Yeah.
And I feel like Luke Cage wanted to do that in this story. It just wasn't letting him. So I'm excited to see him in a different setting. I think...
Can't wait to see Spider-Man in this part of the universe.
I really hope they try to tie those
That would be
together
so
better.
cool. Because he would fit so well.
He would, and he's a ground level hero. He's not an Avenger like they're making it out to be in these movies, which sucks because he's popular. That's why he can have a movie.
Well, and he can be at their level at certain points.
It's whoever writes him is their power level. But so is Luke Cage.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is he's in those movies because he's popular.
Yeah.
He's not in those movies because he's the strongest person.
No.
No.
It's
the same thing. Like Luke Cage would probably beat him up. Daredevil is just as low level as Spider-Man is when it comes to powers and being in New York and making a difference. And we're never going to get that team up thing because Spider-Man is popular enough to have a movie. Daredevil no longer is. And that is a little disappointing. But
Daredevil could eventually get to that level.
He could. He definitely could. He hasn't yet.
No.
He might show up in like Infinity War Part 2 because they really seem like they want to put everybody in there. That's all the stuff that's come out recently is a lot of these heroes aren't going to be in Part 1. But we're all going to be in Part 2. So
I mean, it makes sense. Part 1, things kind of escalate and then get to a point to where they need more help.
Right. And that's what they're playing up. But the problem is the way that they shoot these movies, they shoot them so far in advance.
Yeah,
they don't have.
You can't really
link those schedules.
Those timelines don't work super well.
Exactly, and that's the excuse. I'm sure there's logistical ways to get around that. But I think part of it is that really bad blood between Perlmutter and Jeff Loeb and Kevin Feige and those two like sides of Marvel TV and movies just don't want to work together.
Which is so frustrating because Kevin Feige's awesome and so is Jeff Loeb.
I
like Jeff Loeb a lot more, but
and I'm sure Jeff Loeb isn't the problem. I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure it's Perlmutter, but like I just wish that we could see more cohesion because it works really well with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And even though it's only one way, it still is really fun when you see that. And it gets really annoying that they just keep referring to the incident and there's no one's talking about the dude in Hell's Kitchen that's doing stuff. I mean, there's sly references sometimes in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to those things.
Yes.
But, and I think back in the background of a news thing in Civil War, somebody was talking about the Inhumans that happened on S.H.I.E.L.D. So there is part of that. Like, it is still happening. They just don't know how to fit it in more of a direct way.
Right.
So hopefully we'll see that. Overall, we enjoyed Luke Cage. It was not perfect. It was not the best show, but it was still fun.
It's pizza. It's
mediocre
it's pizza.
Exactly. It's just better than everything else.
Yep.
So let us know in the comments below what you thought of Luke Cage. Are you excited for Iron Fist? Are you excited for The Defenders? Are you going to watch Luke Cage a second time around just because you loved it that much? Let us know in the comments below. I'm Terry Smith. I'm at Resident Stevel on Twitter. This is Jordan McLanson. He is at
Extraordinary.
And we're the Cave Trolls, and we're out.